The sun was hot over the human colony market. People shouted, traded, and walked fast. No one paid attention to the small figure in the shadow. She was thin, dirty, and shaking from hunger. Her clothes were torn, her eyes large and tired. She was not from Earth, she was alien. The shopkeeper, John, was counting credits behind his stall. He sold milk, bread, and fruit to miners and workers. Business was slow today. Suddenly, he heard a soft voice behind him. So soft, it was almost like the wind. He turned slowly. There, standing near his counter, was a little alien girl. Her skin was light blue, almost gray. Her arms were too thin, her legs shaking. But her eyes were strong, full of something he couldn't name. She looked up at him, scared but brave. "Just milk for my sister." "Please," she whispered. "I'll pay." "You, back when I'm grown?" John blinked, surprised. Nobody ever gave things away for free here, especially not to aliens. They were not welcome in this colony. Seen as dirty, weak, or dangerous, people threw rocks at them, cursed them, chased them. But this one, this girl, she didn't beg, she didn't cry or lie. She just asked calmly, like she had no other choice left, and that last line, "I'll pay you back when I'm grown." It stuck in his chest like a knife. John looked around quickly. A few humans nearby had noticed. They stared, whispering, frowning. He knew what they were thinking. Why is that alien at his stall? Throw her out, disgusting thing. But John didn't move, he didn't shout or push her away. Instead, he quietly picked up a small bottle of milk. He placed it on the counter. The girl looked at it. Then at him, her lips trembled, but she said nothing more. Her hands reached out slowly, gently, like the milk was treasure. John saw her fingers. They were cracked, dry, shaking from weakness. She held the bottle like it was life itself. Then she turned and ran fast, too fast for someone so weak. John stood still, heart beating strangely. He had no idea why he gave her the milk. He had no plan, but something about her stayed in his mind. That voice, those words, the way she ran, not like a thief, but like someone scared of losing time. He walked out from behind the stall and looked down the street. The girl had disappeared, gone into the maze of broken metal and trash piles behind the market. It was a part of town no one liked to enter. It smelled like rust, oil, and lost things. But John couldn't help it. He followed. He walked slowly, carefully, his boots made soft thuds on the old metal ground. He passed burned-out homes, crushed vehicles, broken signs. Then he heard Ida's soft sound, a whisper, like a song. Then silence. He stopped at a large pile of junk. Behind it was a small hole in the wall. He crouched, peeked inside. There she was, the alien girl, kneeling beside someone, a smaller child. Even thinner, lying on a torn blanket, eyes closed, lips pale, skin dry, her sister. The older girl opened the bottle of milk. She cradled her sister's head and poured drops into her mouth. Softly, gently, like a mother. Her eyes were full of tears, but not a single one fell. John felt his chest tighten. He stepped back, quietly, carefully. He had seen enough. He didn't want to scare them. He didn't want her to think he wanted the milk back. As he walked back toward his stall, he heard her voice again, faint but clear in his memory. "Just milk for my sister, please. I'll pay you back when I'm grown." The colony was cruel. The rules were harsh, but something had changed in him today. He didn't know why. He just knew he'd return tomorrow with more than just milk. The next morning, John opened his shop early, but his hands moved slower than usual. The memory of the alien girl haunted him. Her whisper, her eyes. The way she held the milk like it was hope. He couldn't forget her sister either. That small body, barely alive in the shadows. He packed a small bag, not just milk today. He added bread, Dried meat, water, and a soft towel. People might notice, might talk, but he didn't care now. He had to do something. Anything. He walked past the market quietly, kept his head low, ignored the stares when he reached the edge of the colony. He stepped into the back alleys where no one cared to look. Trash, broken doors, rusted machines, the forgotten part of town. And somewhere in this place, she was hiding. John reached the pile of junk where he had seen her disappear. The same hole in the wall was there, small and dark. He crouched, holding the bag tightly. He wasn't sure if she'd run again, or if she'd even be there. He called. Softly, "Hey." "It's me, the milkman." No answer. He placed the bag on the ground, then slowly backed away. "I brought more." "You don't owe me." Still silence. He turned to leave, but then a whisper came, like wind through old wires. "Wait." He turned back quickly. The alien girl had stepped out of the shadows. She looked thinner, her face more tired, but her eyes were still strong. She looked at the bag, then at him. Her voice was rough, unsure. "Why? Are you helping us?" John paused. He didn't have a good answer. Maybe he just didn't like watching children starve. Maybe he was tired of pretending he didn't care. Maybe he just wanted to be better. "You looked like someone who needed help," he said, and no one else was helping. The girl stared at him, quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped forward, grabbed the bag, and pulled it into the hole. She didn't say thank you, but John didn't expect her to. Trust takes time. Time is all he had. He waited outside, listening, inside. He heard the soft sounds of unwrapping, a quiet gasp. Then the tiny laugh of a younger child. It was weak, but real. The sound made his heart feel warm. He smiled and stood up, ready to leave. Then he heard something else. Not from inside the hole, but from behind him, footsteps, slow and heavy. He turned quickly. A man stood there, one of the local miners, big and angry. He had seen John, seen the bag, and knew what this was. "You feeding them?" The man growled. "Those alien rats." John stayed calm. "They're just kids," he said softly. The man stepped closer. "They're not our problem. They're not even people. They're pests." He spat on the ground. "Feeding them makes you one of them." John clenched his fists, but said nothing more. The man stared at him for a moment, then walked away, shaking his head. But the warning was clear. Others would hear about this soon. John looked back at the hole in the wall. He had to be careful now. This colony was not kind to those who broke the unspoken rules. But he didn't care about the rules anymore. He came back every day that week. Sometimes with food, sometimes with water. Once, he even brought a small blanket. The girls never came out together. Only the older one spoke to him. She never gave her name, but each time she spoke, her voice grew a little softer, less afraid. One day, she finally stepped fully into the light. Oh, and John noticed something strange: her legs. One of them was badly hurt, bent in a strange way. She limped when she moved, hiding the pain behind her strong face. She saw him looking and froze, but he didn't speak, didn't point. He just handed her the food gently and turned away. That night, John couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about those two girls. Alone, starving, scared. What had happened to them? Why were they even here? He remembered how the colony used to be, before the rules hardened, before the fences grew taller. There had been kindness once. Now, kindness was treated like weakness. He whispered to the dark, "No more watching. No more silence." Rain fell softly on the colony roofs. Cold wind moved through the streets like a ghost. Most shops stayed closed that morning. But John's shop opened early. Again, he had a plan. He had hope in his hands. Inside his bag were food, warm socks, small medicines, and yes, milk. But this time, he wasn't alone. Someone else was watching him. A tall man stood across the street, leaning against a wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. He didn't move, didn't speak. But his stare followed John like a shadow. John knew the colony had started to notice, and that meant danger was getting close. Still, he walked past the crowd. Past the judgment, he took the old path toward the wreckage. The metal piles were still there, rusted and broken, but to him, they felt alive now, like they held something important, something good. He knelt near the hole, placed the bag gently on the ground, then whispered, "It's me again, the milkman." A moment passed, then a quiet shuffle. The alien girl peeked out, her face cautious when she saw the bag. Her eyes widened, but then she saw something else: John's bruised cheek, the fresh cut near his eye. "You got hurt," she said softly. John touched the wound and gave a small smile. "It's nothing," he whispered. "Some people don't like what I'm doing." The girl looked down. She seemed to shrink, as if the guilt was too heavy. "You shouldn't come," she said. "They'll hurt you more." John shook his head. "I'll take the risk. Because your sister is alive, and she smiled yesterday. That's worth it." The girl was quiet, then slowly reached for the bag. She opened it carefully and found something new inside: a folded piece of soft cloth. She lifted it, confused. "A dress." John said, "It's old, but warm." He saw her eyes fill with something unfamiliar. Not sadness, not fear. It was surprise, and maybe the start of trust. But trust is never safe in a place filled with hate. Because across the street, behind a pile of scrap metal, that same man who watched John earlier now held a small device. A camera. He took pictures quietly, then left with a smirk. That night, the colony square was loud. Voices shouted, angry and sharp. Images were displayed on screens, pictures of John giving supplies to an alien girl. "Traitor," someone shouted. "Feeding parasites," another cried. John stood before the council, tired but calm. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to lie. "I helped to starving children," he said. "They are not our enemy." The crowd didn't care. Old hate ran deep. To them, aliens were not children. They were threats. One councilman slammed the table. "You risked the colony's peace. For what? A pair of sick, alien rats." John looked up. His voice didn't rise, but it cut through the room like a blade. For the first time in months, a child smiled. "That's what I risked it for." But the decision was made. He was to be watched, warned, and fined. If he helped them again, he'd lose his shop, maybe worse. Back at the ruins, the girl waited. The milkman didn't come that day, nor the next. She sat near the hole, the small blanket covering her sister. The food was almost gone, the cold returning, and then, on the third night, the girl heard soft footsteps outside. She held her breath. Then a whisper came. Not from John, but from someone else. "You in there, little thief?" A rough voice. Her heart stopped. It wasn't John. It was danger, real and close. She grabbed her sister and pushed her deeper into the shadows. The man from the pictures stepped into the hideout, holding a stick in one hand, a cruel smile on his face. "No more free meals for you," he said. He swung the stick at a pile of cans, making a loud noise. "Come out, little rat." But before he could strike again, a deep shout echoed, "Hey!" It was John. He had followed the man, even after the warning, even after the fine. He tackled the man to the ground, fighting like a storm. The two rolled in the dirt, fists flying, until colony guards pulled them apart. One guard looked at the man with the stick. "You brought a weapon into civilian zone. You broke the peace rule." The man tried to talk. "She's an alien." "She's not." The guard held up a hand. "No exceptions." John stood, bruised again, bleeding again. He looked at the hiding girl, and she finally stepped out, not to beg, not to cry, but to say something she had never said before: thank you. The sky over the colony turned dark with heavy clouds. Rain was coming again, cold and hard, but something else was brewing, something worse than weather. Whispers had turned into noise, and noise had turned into rage. People no longer just stared at John. They spat near his stall, knocked over his crates. Some refused to buy from him. Some shouted words like alien lover and now. Someone had painted red symbols on his door, a warning and a threat, inside his shop. John sat with bandages on his arms, but his mind wasn't on his pain. He was thinking about the girls hidden. Afraid, alone again, he hadn't visited in 2 days. Not since the fight, but today he would go. Even if it cost him everything. He stepped outside. Rain beginning to fall on his coat. As he walked toward the edge of town, he noticed eyes watching from windows. He felt it. He was now marked, a traitor in their eyes. But before he reached the wreckage, he saw smoke, not from a chimney, but black, thick smoke rising into the sky. His heart dropped. He ran, faster than he had in years. He turned the corner and froze. The junk piles were burning. Flames danced across the metal and debris, and in the middle stood the shelter, the small hole the girls had lived in, now on fire. No, he whispered. He rushed forward, covering his face, but then he heard it a scream, high and sharp. The older alien girl crawled from the fire, coughing. Her face was blackened with smoke. Her arms burned, but in her arms. She held her sister wrapped in the blanket. John reached them, pulled them away from the heat. He threw his coat over their bodies and shouted for help, but no one came. No guards, no medics, no friends. Only more faces standing far away, watching, silent, judging. Later, the council called a meeting. The fire had spread, damaging nearby storage buildings, and someone had to be blamed. John stood in front of the room again, but this time the alien girl was beside him. Her legs were wrapped in cloth, her eyes full of fear. But she stood anyway, tall as she could. She saved her sister, John said, voice firm. She didn't start that fire, the crowd muttered. One councilwoman spoke. We have witnesses who saw you near the site, John, and this creature, she said coldly, pointing at the girl. She has no name, no registration, no rights here. John stepped forward. She has a name, he said. I just haven't heard it yet. The alien girl looked up at him, surprised. No one had ever asked her name before. Slowly, in a soft voice, she said, My name is Isha. Silence followed. A name so simple, but so powerful. A child with a name. One old councilman leaned forward. And what do you want, Isha? Why are you here? Isha clutched her sister tighter. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. I want her to live, she said. I'll do anything. Clean. Build, even mine the rocks. I just don't want her to die. Some in the room looked away. Others frowned, but not with hate this time. Maybe shame, maybe guilt. The councilwoman stood again. This is not our problem, she said coldly. We are not a rescue station for alien orphans. But then a voice interrupted. A young woman stood up from the crowd. She held a small child, her son. Kaya told me that blue girls saved his life during the explosion. She said she went in when no one else dared. Gasps followed. It was true, John had told them before, but hearing it from another colonist. A mother changed something. The tension cracked slightly. Another voice came. She worked harder than my son in the scrapyard. She cleaned up, asked for nothing, took only scraps, and then silence again. The council argued for hours, but in the end, they reached a decision. The girls would not be punished. They would be moved to a shelter, real one, under watch, but with food, safety, and warmth. John would not be fined further, but warned once more. One more act. The council warned, and you lose everything. That night, in the small shelter, Isha sat by her sister's bed, feeding her warm soup. The room had clean sheets, soft light, a window for the first time. Her sister smiled without pain. John stood by the door, watching. He said nothing, but when Isha looked at him, she gave a small nod. Not a bow, not thanks, just a promise, quiet and strong. One day, she would pay him back when she was grown. The colony sun rose behind thick smoke from the mining fields. Machines groaned in the distance. Digging deep into the planet's belly, workers moved like ants, silent, tired, routine. No one smiled. Work meant survival, not joy, but inside the small shelter near the edge of the colony, two sisters woke up together, warm, fed, and safe for the first time in months. Isha helped her younger sister sit up. She brushed her hair with slow fingers and whispered, "You'll be okay now. I promise." John knocked on the door gently. He didn't come empty-handed. He brought books today, and a stuffed toy someone left behind in his shop. Isha opened the door and smiled. A small smile, but real. "She laughed last night," Isha said softly. "She even said your name in her sleep." "Milkman," John chuckled. "Well, I suppose that's my title now." He stayed only a short while. He knew others still didn't trust him, but seeing the girls safe made the risk worth it. Later that day, the ground shook. A low rumble passed through the colony. At first, no one noticed. The machines often caused tremors. But then came the alarms, sharp, loud, panicked. The mining sector had collapsed. A tunnel broke down, burying 5 workers inside. One of them was just 13, a miner's son helping during break season. Trapped under stone and steel, the rescue crew rushed toward the mines. People gathered around the fences, whispering, praying. But the equipment jammed. The tunnels were too narrow, too dangerous. The rescuers refused to go in without proper support. "We need at least 2 hours to clear the rocks," the foreman said, "but he won't survive that long." Someone cried. Then a voice came, soft but firm. "I can go." The crowd turned. Isha stepped forward. Her body was still thin. Her legs still limped, but her eyes were steady like stone. "You?" the foreman asked, confused. "You're a child." "I was small enough to hide for weeks in scrap piles," she replied. "I'm small enough to crawl through those tunnels." John pushed through the crowd. "No, Isha, it's not your job," he said. "You don't have to prove anything." But Isha shook her head. "I'm not proving," she whispered. "I'm paying back." The crew gave her a mask, a light, and tied a rope to her waist. She disappeared into the broken tunnel like a shadow. Minutes passed, then more. People waited, held their breath. The boy's mother sobbed near the fence, clutching her husband's arm. Then a shout echoed from the hole. "Got him!" 2 lights flickered deep inside the tunnel. Then the rope pulled once, twice, then hard. Isha crawled out first, coughing, face covered in dust and blood. Behind her, the miner's son, alive, weak, but breathing. The crowd exploded in shock and relief. People rushed to help, pulling the boy to safety. Medics swarmed in. Isha stood up slowly, but her leg gave out. She collapsed onto the ground. John caught her just before her head hit the dirt. "You did it," he whispered. "You crazy, brave little star, you did it." By evening, the news spread across the colony. The alien girl, the same one they had hated, she had saved a human. Boy, she had risked her life for someone she didn't even know. Even the council couldn't ignore it. They called an emergency meeting, this time. Not to punish, but to discuss what to do next. "She's just a child," one councilman said. "But she did more today than some of our own," another replied. Arguments flew against. Some still clung to old hate, but many were quiet because, deep down, they knew Something was changing. The next day, a visitor came to the shelter. The boy's mother, with a fresh basket of food and clean clothes. "I wanted to say thank you," she said to Isha, "and to ask. If your sister needs anything, we'll help." Isha didn't speak right away. She just stared at the woman with wide, cautious eyes, then gave a small nod. John watched from the door. His heart felt heavy and light at the same time. He never wanted fame. He just wanted someone to care. And now, they were starting to. That night, Isha sat beside her sister again. The small girl was drawing shapes on the wall with a piece of chalk. They were stars, and under the stars, she drew 3 stick figures, 2 girls and a tall man with a square jaw and a round belly. Isha smiled, then whispered to her sleeping sister, "One day, we'll leave this place. We'll find somewhere with real stars, not smoke, and maybe we'll bring the milkman with us for the first time in colony history." People lined up outside the council hall, not to protest, but to listen. The air felt strange, like the wind had changed direction. Whispers turned softer. Faces seemed calmer. Even the children who once threw rocks at the alien girls now looked away in silence. Inside the hall, voices argued. Some council members still held old beliefs. "She's still an outsider." One man growled, "Today, it's a child. Tomorrow, it's her whole kind walking in." But others pushed back. "Did any of us run into that tunnel? She saved a human life while we stood frozen. Maybe it's time we rethink who the enemy really is." In the middle of the argument, a new voice entered, strong, tired, and full of truth. John, the shopkeeper, he stood at the podium. Not asking for favor, but for fairness. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm not trying to change the world. I just gave milk to a starving girl, and somehow that made me a criminal. And now that same girl risked her life to save your own." He looked around the room, his eyes hard. "She doesn't want power," he said. "She wants her sister to live, that's all. And maybe she deserves more than just survival." Silence filled the room. Then the council head sighed and leaned forward. "Fine," he said. "Let's vote." The results came in later that day. The council agreed by a narrow margin on something never done before. Isha and her sister would be registered as colony residents. They would be given basic rights: shelter, food, safety, and limited education. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. A small crack in the wall that had once separated humans and aliens completely. When John brought the news to the girls, Isha didn't believe it at first. She looked at him, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. "Registered?" She asked softly. "You mean we belong now?" John smiled. "You're not ghosts anymore," he said. "You have names in the system, a roof that won't be taken, and food that won't be stolen." Isha fell silent, then walked outside. Into the light rain, she tilted her head back, letting the drops hit her face. Then, for the first time since John met her, she laughed. It was soft, a little shaky, but real. Her sister peeked out from the shelter door, and seeing Isha laugh, she laughed too. Later that week, Isha started school. Not a full class, just a small corner in the community learning center. Other kids stared at her with mixed feelings, some curious, some scared, some still angry, but she didn't flinch. She sat quietly, listened carefully, and never missed a day. She learned human numbers, basic writing, and even how to draw stars on paper instead of walls. One day, her teacher asked her to share something about her past. The class waited, thinking she'd say nothing. But Isha stood up and spoke in simple words. "My name is Isha," she said. "I used to sleep in broken metal and eat old food, but someone gave me milk. And now I'm sick. And now I'm sick. And now I'm sick. I'm here. I don't hate anyone. I just want peace." The room fell silent. Even the loudest boy in the back didn't have a joke. Some looked at her with new eyes, not as a stranger, but as someone brave. Meanwhile, John's shop became busy again. People began to return some. In silence, some with apologies. One old man dropped off a bag of fruit and muttered. For the girls, before walking away fast, even the guards started nodding at John when they passed by. Small gestures, but real. The colony was changing slowly, like a rusted gate opening inch by inch. One evening, the council invited Isha to speak. They said it was a formality, but really, they wanted to hear from the girl who had shifted an entire community with just courage and kindness. She stood before them, wearing a clean dress John had given her weeks ago. Her sister sat nearby, holding a toy bear. The same bear John had once brought with the books. Isha spoke clearly. "I don't ask for everything," she said. "Just the chance to grow up without fear. I want to be someone useful, not someone hiding." The council members listened, and for the first time, no one interrupted. Not one word of hate. Not one voice raised in anger. After she finished, one councilwoman stood. "Isha," she said, "we can't erase the past, but maybe we can build a better future together." That night, Isha returned to the shelter. But something inside her had shifted. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was becoming something more, something bigger. John watched from a distance, arms crossed, smiling quietly. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need reward. He had already received the greatest gift, hope, years past. The dusty colony that once hated outsiders now looked different. New buildings stood where old wrecks used to rot. Children from many species played together in the schoolyard, and the people. They had changed too, but John, now older, slower still, ran the same little shop. His hair was gray, his back bent, yet every morning he opened the doors with the same quiet smile. People still called him Milkman, but now they said it with respect. One morning, as the sun rose over the red hills, a strange ship landed at the edge of the colony. Not military, not cargo, sleek, silver, shaped like a teardrop, a royal ship, but not from Earth. The colony guards stood ready, uncertain. The doors of the ship opened with a soft hiss, and out stepped a tall figure in dark blue armor. Her skin was soft gray blue, her eyes bright silver. She moved like wind, graceful but strong. Behind her followed two guards, alien and human, and walking beside her, a little girl laughing and skipping with gray skin and curly black hair. The colonists stared in shock. Some recognized her face, but didn't dare speak it. Could it be the alien girl they once called a beggar? John stood at the door of his shop, a basket of fruit in his hand, when he saw her. He dropped to topples, rolled across the floor. His mouth opened, but no words came. The tall woman smiled. She walked slowly to him and knelt down, not because she was weak, but because she remembered. She took his hands and held them gently. "Hello, Milkman," she said, her voice softer than ever. "I told you I'd pay you back." When I was grown, John stared, tears filling his eyes. "Isha," he whispered, "you look like a queen." "I'm a representative now," she said, "ambassador to 3 planets, but once I was a girl with no shoes, and you gave me milk," he chuckled, wiping his eyes. "I just gave you a bottle." "No," she said. "You gave me the chance to grow." The colony council gathered quickly when they heard the news. They offered Isha a private room, food, gifts, but she refused most of it. She only asked for one thing, a seat at the next colony meeting. When she entered the council hall, no one stopped her. She stood tall, wearing her people's symbol over her heart, and beside her sat her young daughter, smiling and scribbling stars on a notepad. "I came not to ask," Isha said calmly, "but to give." The council leaned forward, listening. "Your kindness saved 2 lives," she continued. "But now I offer help in return. I bring knowledge, medicine, trade, and peace from 3 allied worlds, not as a favor, but as a friend. One old councilman cleared his throat. "We once feared your kind," he admitted, "but you proved us wrong." Without ever raising a weapon, Isha nodded. "You feared what you didn't know," she said, "and I understand. But now, you know me." Later that evening, the colony celebrated something rare, a reunion that felt like a legend. People gathered in the square, lights glowing like stars. Isha stood beside John, introducing her daughter to those who once looked away. Children asked her questions. "How did you learn so much? Were you really just a girl with no legs?" Isha smiled at each one and answered gently. She didn't hide the past, she honored it. In the quiet of the night, Isha and John sat alone on a bench. The stars above were clear for once. No smoke, no fire, just sky. She looked at him with warmth. In her eyes, "I never forgot your face," she said. "Even when I stood before kings and leaders, I remembered the human who gave a stranger's child a bottle of milk." John looked down, his voice rough. "I didn't do enough." "You did more than anyone else," she said. "You made the first crack in a wall I thought would never break." Then her daughter ran up with a flower. "Grandpa Milkman." She laughed, handing him the petals. John chuckled and accepted it. "I'll treasure this more than gold," he said. And so, the alien girl who once whispered in hunger became the woman who returned in strength, not with revenge, not with demands, but with peace and love. And a child who would grow up knowing both her worlds, and somewhere in the middle of all that change, one simple man sat in his chair, holding a flower, smiling at the stars, because sometimes the smallest act becomes the beginning of everything.